big logistical challenge, you think, for officials per team for every
Mhm.
game on a weekend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of officials to service, support. Yeah, when you break it down, it's quite scary how big it is. On average, probably 250 to 300 events per game of whenever we feel an official has to make a decision. Identifying technical, tactical patterns for pre-match, post-match, data patterns, key trends, indicators of performance that a referee might find pertinent to apply in a game context. If I feel, like I said, that couple of hours on a night, if I'm sat there watching football anyway, can help go a mile in a refereeing context or a match officiating context, and I find value in that. It's quite a niche corner of the market that we work in.
Mm.
Like I don't think people realise that we exist, which is fine. I quite enjoy existing in the silence, to be honest. But
Hello and welcome back to my channel, and as you can tell, this is another industry chat video, and today's guest is Jordan Tattersall. So Jordan is an analyst with the PGMOL, which is the Professional Games Match Officials Ltd, so all about the referees. So really interested to delve into what Jordan actually gets up to in terms of giving information and providing the referees with support, all in the hope of increasing the standard of refereeing overall. So before we get into the video, I will apologize. Sometimes throughout this video, the lighting on my end is a little bit too bright. I didn't realize how much sun was coming in through the window. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully it doesn't impact your viewing experience too much. But without further ado, let's get into the video with Jordan. Hello, Jordan. Welcome to the channel. How are you doing today?
hey, mate, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yes, me too, me too. So obviously a little bit different in terms of your role today. And the reason I wanted to get you on and speak to you, selfishly, I'm interested myself. So I wanted to speak to you about what you do. I want to learn about that. But also for the viewers, I think it's important for them to see that there's roles within sport and within analysis specific outside of the traditional club analyst. So obviously we'll get into what you do, and I think it's really interesting. So I think it just shows shines a light on a different type of role that maybe people didn't actually know existed. So before we started, Jordan, I gave a little bit of an intro, but I like to put that back onto the guest. So just for those who don't know who are you and what are you currently doing?
Um, yeah, so probably by title, probably the best way to describe myself is I'm a performance analyst at PGMOL, which we'll touch on in a bit. Been here for 3 and a bit years now, which kind of makes no sense to me. The pandemic's kind of skewed the whole perception of time.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I started off on the evaluation side, which again we'll touch upon, and then moved to the performance department September, October last year. And yeah, it's a different challenge, a different outlook, a different mindset to approaching analysis. Both are quite different, but they both taught me a critical skill set in terms of officiating, which is obviously the background I work in terms of this side of football. So yeah, that's probably the best way to give a brief overview of
Yep.
me, myself, and I.
Yeah, perfect. So, like I say, we'll get into the kind of roles that you've done in your previous kind of job at the PGMOL and what you're doing at the moment. So, for those that don't know, touched upon obviously the referee. So, PGMOL, for those that don't know what that means, is the Professional Game Match Officials Limited. So, it looks after all of the referees, or at least a big group of them. So, just on that, Jordan, are you able to share kind of what the refereeing or officiating landscape looks like in the UK? Is it kind of ranked in different levels, and how does one progress? And just kind of give the viewer or the listener a bit of a picture of how that looks, really, if you can.
Yeah, so PGMOL have a responsibility for match officials ranging from Set Group 1, which is officials that operate in the Premier League, to Step 1, which is all the way down to the national groups, the National League, sorry. And then we encompass the Set Group Women's Professional game as well, which we took on under our framework recently as well, which is another logistical challenge. And then outside of that, the FA look after match officials from Step 2 onwards to Level 7. So yeah, that's probably the best way I could summarize the
Yeah.
structure of the company. It's a big company, big organization, big logistical challenge, you think, for officials per team for every
Mm.
game on a weekend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of officials to service, support. Yeah, when you break it down, it's quite scary how big it is of a challenge to support. And I'm glad I don't work on the operations side of it, shall I say.
Definitely. So then you mentioned there they kind of they get help from you guys as analysts when they reach, is it like level 4? Is that when they would start to receive kind of stuff from you? Because I'm just curious to what does, so this is probably more in your previous role, which we'll touch upon. So you started with the PGMOL as an evaluation analyst, now you're a performance analyst. So what is an analyst maybe at that evaluation stage? What are they coding? Because people think of an analyst in a football club, they're coding the team and what they've done well, what they've done not so well. How does that look for a referee? What kind of things are you coding and reviewing from a referee's performance, really?
Yeah, so in that perspective, I'll go to obviously with the volume of officials to service, we haven't got the resource or the capacity to service everyone. So the observation scheme exists for anything outside of the Premier League, Championship, and WSL games. So they're all observed by an observer in the stand who submit a report, and that goes towards their level of service. But in terms of Select Group 1, Select Group 2, and the women's pathway, they're all fall under the evaluation bracket. And in terms of decisions, it's almost coding on average probably 250 to 300 events per game of whenever we feel an official has to make a decision. And it's all kind of given under a draft framework from an Opta data set, which we bring in and put into our specialist in-house software. So that's kind of how it exists, and then all that goes towards coaching, development and mark schemes and such. So any critical moments, anything we feel has been done really well, anything that we feel subjectively could have been done better and stuff like that, and it goes to another level to be appraised, and it all just feeds into that continuous cycle of refereeing development, I suppose.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, we're going to get into more of what you do and what you did in your previous role and your current role, but I just want to kind of go back a little bit, Jordan, if that's all right. So, just a bit on how, do like to kind of find out how people got into analysis. So just looking at your background, obviously you have done you've done some coaching as well. You've done obviously your degree and also a master's as well. So you've done that. So in terms of analysis for you, when was it something that you kind of figured actually this could be a career for me? How did that come about, and when, where was that at a particular club, or did someone introduce it to you?
Like you said, I started off in terms of a coaching perspective, really. We were fed at school that Duke of Edinburgh had a massive impact on your career prospects. Whether that does or not, it doesn't matter. So at 14, 15, getting into that, doing the Bronze Award, one of the criteria is actually volunteer somewhere. So I thought, do some volunteering coaching at my local primary school that I used to go to, and kind of just grew my, I suppose, passion for it at the time there. And that progressed from me doing my level 1 and level 2 at college and university, and then led to me doing a stint in America for 12 weeks or so in my second year at uni, which is a balance of an experience but coaching as well. And so I fell into it through that way, and then it kind of just transpired that I found that my sessions were just too heavy in terms of I was trying to be over the top, trying to be too detailed, and my message just wasn't getting across. I wasn't clear in my communication, so that was just something I thought I'm probably not best. And everyone was kind of going down the coaching pathway who I was surrounded by, so I thought I might try something a bit different. And then my interest peaked towards like video-based performances and stuff, and I kind of just snowballed into it that way. And then after my third year, I did my dissertation and started to put the feelers out of if I could get experience anywhere, and found out I was a bit underqualified. So then I kind of started to build like a personal portfolio in the background and put out what I suppose I thought I knew back then. And then obviously with my master's came the opportunity to get some industry-based experience, which was kind of like emphasized that it'll go a long way working hand in hand using your education and academic experience in a context of an actual football-based environment. So unfortunately, Barnsley Football Club took me on when I was in my master's year, so 5 years ago this year, which is a bit scary. So Jamie at Barnsley, who we both know, took me on, took a chance on me, and Jamie gave me the opportunity, and I've kind of just rolled with that ever since, and that's how I got into analysis. And that was my tunnel vision once I was at Barnsley, seeing what was capable, what sort of opportunities people are making a career out of, literally living in football. I thought, why would I not want to do this as a career? It was very academic, so I enjoyed my masters, but I very much wanted to get into football full time, and then nothing came of that. So went into what I suppose a normal job in a way outside of football, which kind of just makes you determined to keep working to get into the job that I'd worked so hard to try and give myself a foundation to get into. And then PGMOL came along, and I've been here ever since. So that's probably my whistle stop tour of my journey from 14, 15 getting into coaching to 26, 27 me working in analysis for the last 6, 7 years.
7 years, nice. So what were you doing at Barnsley, Jordan? Were you with the academy at that point? Were you helping out a bit of both, or what kind of things were you doing there?
So I think when I took on the interview, it was kind of branched out to be first team academy, balance it out. But I think it just transpired that the first team were fairly well serviced, so fell under the academy branch of Jamie, and Jamie kind of took me under his wing and worked my way up from being introduced like the under nines, under tens on a Sunday morning to then helping Jamie with the 23s and stuff. And yeah, just kind of covered every age group with the academy. And yeah, it just opened my eyes a bit to obviously what's possible, what the experience Jamie had, what the other analysts there had. And just kind of taught me, I'll allude to this a bit more later, about the analyst I wanted to be, type of approach I wanted to take, and just giving me that experience of what it's like to be an analyst, working with clubs, players, and people's different attitudes at the time. Obviously, it's come a long way in that 5 years since I was even at that level. And obviously, I've not been in a club since. But yeah, it was a great year, great club, great foundation, and I owe a lot to Jamie on the football club for giving me that opportunity. Because without it, I don't know. To be honest, it's quite easy to say I probably wouldn't be where I am now without that experience. But yeah, it's quite easy to say that, I suppose.
Yeah, no, definitely. You mentioned we both know Jamie, so shout out to Jamie Powell, who was at Barnsley at the time. Great bloke, Jamie. So yeah, gave you a chance, and you've taken it with both hands, mate. So just curious then. So you mentioned obviously you moved on from Barnsley to the PGMOL as initially you were evaluation analyst. So for some that might not mean anything. What were you doing on a weekly basis, and what would your average week look like in that first role that you had? I know you maybe changed to a different role now, but what were you doing initially? Just curious to know about that.
So it kind of says what it is on the tin, really. It's an evaluation analyst of refereeing performance, if you put it in that context. So, like I said, we'd get in a drafted data set and then we'd alter that accordingly, add in events, look at the performance of the referee, and add in events to essentially where we thought he or she had made a decision. And pick out events that we thought were critical, which we thought were a great decision, so above what you'd probably class as an expected decision, and then ones we probably felt were subjectively could have been made better or something, and then that would go to an next panel of evaluators and to a standardization session where they'd make a final decision on such decisions, and then submit that report after the referee match official had the right to reply, to come back on that, explaining why such decision was made. And that kind of taught me about the qualitative side and subjective side of how decisions are made. Maybe on the face value of it, something looks like it should be, for example, a foul, but maybe it wasn't given at a time for game management purposes or something, or the referee had a conversation with X player, such decision, and that just feed into the process of their overall mark scheme and go towards their development of where they progress throughout the season and which group essentially they fall under the bracket of.
Yeah, and then so maybe obviously I know it would be determined by manpower, obviously in terms of how much you can handle, because there's loads of referees as you mentioned. So other referees, maybe it's more at a higher level, but are they getting video clips of these things that so they can actually review let's say their positioning when a decision was made? Like, are they receiving that from you guys as analysts? Or is that part of their own review process? They have to do it themselves just to kind of look back and see what they did well and what they didn't do so well in the game, really?
Yeah, they get access to all their reports, and even outside of the reports, they get access to all their own video footage anyway. So independently, they can review their own performance and look at things that they felt personally they were happy with or whatever. But yeah, no, it's just one big cycle, and it was a coherent aim, and still is a coherent aim for the guys there now that are trying to just underpin a referee's performance and development across the season and their career, I suppose. And it's like I said, there was something that was made very apparent. It's just finding that empathetic balance of, on face value, something might look like it, but there's reasons to why it wasn't given X, Y, Z. But yeah, it gave me a good foundation introduction to refereeing, and fortunately move across to the performance side September, October last year, and that's been a complete whirlwind and another eye opener, another level in my own development of being an analyst. And
so you're 6 months into that new position then, or give or take about that anyway. You mentioned. So what's the differences then between? So what are you doing? What is the performance analyst role compared to the evaluation analyst role?
So evaluation is very much probably an independent regulation scheme. There's no real direct interaction with match officials in terms of discussing decisions. It's very much an independent, what they feel. Whereas performance, I'm very much probably more aligned now than I was in terms of a traditional club analyst. It's very much supporting them, very much more front facing, supporting at training meetings, which happen weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, doing a lot of pre-match preparation. So identifying tactical trends from teams. There's such a plethora delve into. It's almost, I feel, negligent not even delving into it because there's just that much. But yeah, identifying technical, tactical patterns for pre-match, post-match, data patterns, key trends, indicators of performance that a referee might find pertinent to apply in a game context, and then translating that level of detail of data, insight, patterns of performance, and seeing how they can apply that in their own performance and support them in their preparation so they feel supported going into a 3 o'clock kickoff, knowing what they can expect from certain teams. And it's, like I said, it is technical and tactical, but it's also when the ball goes dead, looking if certain teams are mastering certain techniques to try and consume time. I know that's a very popular topic at the minute, consume time, seeing if there's foul trends. So not necessarily saying if I feel it's foul, not, but more saying he's making X fouls a game, this is his sort of type of foul.
Yeah.
Finding that balance between informing but not preempting, because that's what I'd want to do is highlight something and an official take and run with it and take it in a very literal. So it's balancing it out. So that's something I've had to become aware of and be, again, empathetic towards and everything. So yeah, that's probably a brief oversight of the direct responsibility that I carry now. And it's just carrying officials on the education journey of analysis. I know it's still within its infancy in our context, and everyone's got their own journey, their own pathway, everyone's got their own needs and requirements. Everyone needs to be serviced differently. And like I said, there's 600 plus match officials. Not everyone has level of access to data and video that maybe SG1 do, but they've still got a need to try and perform and get to that level one day. So we need to find a way to bring them on that journey, educate them, show them what certain situations look like, show them how a team's setting up from a corner. Can they alter their position accordingly to allow certain routines? If a team's carrying out a certain routine, want to move them away from that a bit so they can still have an optimum view of the situation, but not give away the routine, because ultimately that's the last thing we want to do. So yeah, there's just so much stuff that we're covering nowadays that's really exciting to me, and I enjoy. But I can't switch off. There's just so much football to cover, and even in my personal life, I watch football, so I find myself just naturally gravitating towards watching football just because I feel like it supports my work. So I just feel like I can't switch off, but I enjoy it. I'll allude to it later about it being a young man's or person's world. So right now in my life, this role is servicing me very well, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Perfect. So, because you mentioned there, like the role you're in now is more similar to that of being in a team. So effectively, the referees are your player, like your equivalent of a players. You're preparing the referee instead of preparing the players for the game. So these kind of reports that you mentioned, I mean, this is quite fascinating to me, really, in terms of, I mean, you mentioned some things that are in there. So like, are you then going back? Let's say I'm the referee and I'm refereeing, I'll say Sunderland because that's my team. Sunderland v Newcastle on the weekend. What kind of things are you giving me in terms of information? Are you going to look back at just previous games of the Sunderland and you might say, you know, the captain is prone to doing this play, then the fullback might, you know, he's got so many bookings or he tends to foul from this position. Like what kind of things really? If you can say anything, it is a bit more on what's in those reports, really.
Yeah, I won't go into give away all our secrets, but
No, of course not.
no, I think it's just more about looking at set piece situations. So looking at a corner, does a team like to carry out a short routine where they bring a third man across the line of the 18-yard box where a referee traditionally stands? It's making them aware of that. So it's like if this second pass is coming, you probably want to either stand a bit back or come the other side of him, so you're not getting in their way, he or she's way, sorry. And just little bits like that, looking at attacking patterns, defensive patterns. So looking at once they get into a defensive shape, how do they defend? What areas are they taking up? Which areas are they building at? Are there certain players that like to cut back across the ball and put it in between where a referee normally stands? That's again like you want to do. You don't want to get in the way. Is it a goalkeeper when the ball's dead, getting a ball thrown back onto the pitch, but going and get another ball instead to consume an extra 10, 15 seconds? Little things like that we can kind of make officials aware of heading into the game so they know, okay, he's done that, they've done that. All right, okay. Looking at set piece situations again, so attacking free kicks, seeing if there's any players that start in an offside position and potentially block. Obviously, by law, they're technically interfering, so that it's a whole paradigm of trying to align technical and tactical performance along with what expectations are for us as an organisation and how a referee can set himself up or themselves up to be prepared heading into 90-minute game of football.
It's really, really interesting. I'll give you that. I'd love to see one there. Like, it's just so. I just had no idea that that was actually a thing that you would do, but it obviously makes sense. If you can better prepare the referee, then great. It makes his job easier. Obviously, there's a lot that can go wrong in a game. I mean, a ref could have 99% do everything perfect, but if he's just out of position for one little thing or his view gets blocked, I mean, obviously you now have the help of VAR and stuff, but not in every league. So it is very, very interesting that you go into that level of detail, which I'm sure a lot of people will be surprised to even know about. So
yeah, I'll just caveat as well by just saying that obviously that's like utopia, that's like Premier League, that's every
yeah,
level of data
yeah,
possible, that's every angle possible. We can look at these things, whereas you work your way down the pyramid, and those things become more
yeah,
minute, and you're having to accommodate them in different formats. Um, but again, the lower you go down the pyramid, maybe they
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have time to potentially delve into it. So you've got to help them in different ways. And so, yeah, it's just trying to constantly adapt to the expectations and demand of the official in that context. So that's probably the biggest demand that we find as a department, is trying to figure out how best to service said officials in certain contexts, given the resource we have available to us.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I'm just curious then to ask about the different relationships that you have in your role. So obviously you're giving this information to the referees, and then there's other analysts within your department, I would imagine. So what other kind of people are involved in the whole? Because I know when we spoke off this, it's kind of clear that there's different people in different roles, but they're all working to the same goal to improve the standard of refereeing and keep that to a high standard. So what other roles are within the PGMOL potentially, but also what other types of people are you having conversations with? Are you feeding information to other than the referees themselves?
Yeah, so within our department specifically, so the performance side, there's myself and James, which are at my level. Then there's Dan and Josh, probably above us, and we all work as a collective to try and find the most uniform way to approach situations. Like I said, adapt our needs depending on the official level, league, and then obviously evaluation, which is kind of, like I said, more independent to us. But we're kind of trying to formulate a bridge to see if they can feed us incidents in, because they just watch such a volume of footage that between the 6, 7, 8 of them, they can provide us with so much insight
Yeah,
in different situations. And if they identify a pattern that we potentially have not got to yet, we can accelerate that and incorporate that into our process. So
yeah,
again, like you said, it's just all working towards that one goal of improving refereeing standards and supporting them as we see fit.
mm,
Um, but then again, we're working not just in an analyst perspective, we're working with sports science, seeing how we can create practical sessions for them and
yeah,
use our hardware to give a practical session that replicates a match experience, because
yeah,
that's the, I suppose, biggest challenge in terms of, if you have in a club environment, you've got 23 players, you can play 11v11, you can do your small sided games.
yeah,
You can't replicate that match experience for an official.
yeah, yeah.
You can get local teams in and stuff, but it's just replicating that level and the
Mm,
speed and the intensity to manage their physical output during the week, but also getting that replicability of performance so they can understand certain things. But you can't replicate 24
no,
teams
no,
in the
no.
championships
Yeah,
tactical standards within one practical
mm,
session. So it's hard trying to find that balance between what we can do and what we can't do. And yeah, psychology, sports science, the coaches themselves, what they expect and what they demand, leadership, what they're feeding into us in terms of what their expectations are around every league. So
mm,
yeah, it's a constant cycle. Like I said, we all work under that one framework of just trying to support the officials with the best we can. There's so many to service, and everyone, like I said, has got different expectations, different demands, different learning styles. I think that's something that I've come to learn quite quickly. Some
yeah,
officials pre-match will like to look at 10 minutes of footage and be very much incorporated and tunnel vision, whereas others might want to see 2 or 3 incidents and just take it and run with it because they
yeah,
trust in what we're saying. So it's finding, again, balance. Everything is just underpinned by balance, and there's only so many hours in a day you can work, and even if you put in every hour of the week, I think you'd still find a way you could feel you could service an official better. But
yeah, definitely.
it's all fun and games, and it's something that keeps us on our toes, but we enjoy it.
Definitely. I mean, that's it. That's an interesting point because obviously that's relevant to players as well in terms of delivery and the way that the referees receive it. They might you said one prefers it one way, one prefers it another way, their style of learning. And that's obviously very similar in the fact that if you're working in a club, a certain player is going to want it delivered in a different way. So it's important for analysts, young analysts, and kind of people that work in clubs to obviously understand that that is an important way. The way you deliver to the coach will be different to how you deliver to the player. How you deliver to a 17-year-old player will be delivered to how different to a 34-year-old veteran kind of thing. So it's wow, veteran at 34. Well, that's nearly me, that, to be honest. So I meant to say older than that. So yeah.
Well, yeah, so if you put that in, I'll put it in an official context, but also just analysis context as well, because I think obviously over the last 10 years of analysis in the industry in general, since I've been in it since 2017, should we say? So that's only 6 years. That have been officials that have been part of this organization way before I've even started my journey as in the industry. So I think these roles that we encompass now are very much new in any context like an official. So they will have been, like I said, officials that would have been grown up in their game and their career without someone like us supporting them.
Yeah.
So that's testament to the change in the structure from the company to develop these roles. And I think it's just about finding the time as a young analyst, say young 26, still relatively young, I suppose, finding a good point to where I know I can add value rather than intervening for the sake of intervening sake. So yeah, not just adding a point to a discussion that's going to get lost in translation, or if there's a better point down the road where I know it's going to have value and it's going to be heard better in a better context. And that's something that I've had to learn quite critically. And yeah, so like I said, I've got no refereeing experience. I'm not a referee. I've never been on the pitch in that perspective. So but I play football. I've watched football for a very long time. I'd like to think I know it to a good level. I know I can add value in that context. So it's about helping them on that journey of can I identify a pattern to them and how it'll look from their perspective and why certain teams are doing certain things. So we'll take a situation from a goal kick. If a team is dragging a bank of 6 towards their keeper, but having a bank of 4 on the halfway line, and there's a big space where a referee would normally occupy, can I help identify to them why this situation is happening and what is going to happen if within 2-3 passes it goes from centre half to keeper to the full back through that big empty space where they think they might feel comfortable. But I think we've done a good job over the last 6 months of really bringing them on a journey of this is what can happen and this is why certain teams are doing certain things, and taking maybe a bit longer to set up these routines because they're trying to manipulate situations and spaces. So yeah, I think it's just about taking them on that journey. And like I said, analysis have come on so much just since I've been around. So let alone since some officials have even started their officiating career. So just about growing with them, understanding them, me understanding them understanding me and us. So yeah, it's all one big journey for us all.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier on, Jordan, in terms of the coaches. So obviously, if you think of it back to the team setting, the players have coaches. It's no different with referees. So the referees, I presume, have coaches. Can you touch upon a little bit on that and time in terms of the hierarchy of coaches potentially?
Yeah, so I think again, very much aligned with club principles and frameworks in this modern day. So we've got a coach and director that leads down to a head of training, then there's a match official group manager at a select group level, and then there's a pool of coaches at each level. So there is that framework of what you'd expect from a club organisation down at an officiating level. And then obviously you've got your integration of sports science, psychology, analysis. I'm probably going to miss people here, but this again, it is very much mirroring a football club, especially in this current modern world. So yeah, I think that's probably trying giving the best light behind the curtain, should I say. I don't know if that's the right phrase. I probably balls that up, but yeah, I think that's probably the best way of putting it in terms of
I think
structure.
that is interesting, like you say, that because I think in your context, the referee is the player. You know, that's the athlete. These are athletes. These are the full-time referees, athletes at the top of the game. So the coaches are important to their journey, just as a coach would be to to a professional player. So the fact that you said there the structure is pretty similar in terms of the hierarchy, and it's similar to an actual club setting anyway, makes perfect sense to me. So perfect. So, because one thing you mentioned is like the training camps. I don't know if that's more. Just curious to know, would that be a time when a group of referees all get together and you're involved into the analysis and maybe the sports scientists. Is that right? Like, would you kind of all the referees get together and kind of do it? And how often would that be potentially? And what kind of goes on at them kind of camps and meetups?
Yeah, so you've hit the nail on the head, really. I think in terms of training meetings, yeah. So as an example, this week I was with Select Group One.
Mm-hmm.
We all came together. It was a bit of a smaller group because there was midweek. There's quite a hefty midweek round for the Premier this week. Yeah, we all just come together. Coaches, analysts, sports science, psychology, all do a practical session, individual little carousel sessions, and then we'll all just get in a room and collectively look at incidents, and it's kind of just like an open debate, and everyone's open and honest. And no, the really good environments to be in, to be honest. That it's very transparent, everyone's honest. It's good to get the contact time, because if you're in a club, you'd be in maybe 5 days a week. You'd have your ability to pull a player for 5 minutes and go, right, this is what you've been doing, this is what they're doing, this is who you'll be up against. Whereas if you've got a group of even 40 officials, it's even hard to just grab 5 minutes with one of them, because they come few and far between for some groups. So it's hard to kind of just get that contact time, one-on-one time with them, where you can run through something. Whereas sometimes it'll just be sending them an email or something over, and that's again the logistical challenge that this company faces. Is everyone's just so nationally spread out that it's hard to get that contact time to really delve into some issues. Whereas in a club, you'd be in there 5 days a week, you'd be able to pull them, your defensive line, your midfield line, your forwards, your one-on-ones, your tactical setups, where you could sit in there for an hour and have that open discussion. But with them being so irregular, I suppose it's hard to get that time independently. But no, we service them the best we can, and I think everyone knows that they can come to any independent group or department anytime and get some advice or support.
Yeah, and the support's there for them. So what? Because one question I get asked, and you've probably kind of seen as well, is like how important are coaching badges? And I want to kind of caveat that question with your situation. So I'm presuming you're not. Well, I don't know, but are you, like, in terms of the qualification of a referee? I'm sure you've picked a lot of that up. So firstly, you've got coaching background. So do you have coaching badges, Jordan? Do you
got my level 1 and level 2,
level 1 and stuff? So have you found in your role then that you are then picking up kind of what you would pick up on a referee's courses? I know you're not a qualified, you're not done any referee qualifications. No. So yeah, but I'm just curious to know, because obviously there's things in there that you will learn that when you started, I'm sure it was a big learning curve for you to go into that world of refereeing, coming from like the Barnsley and stuff as academy. So just kind of the stuff that you learn from a referee's perspective, like I'm sure you know a lot more now than you did back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the attitude I've always taken is just trying to be a sponge and just listen to people around you. I read a quote a few months ago saying, if you're the loudest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I just try to apply that in my context, where I don't want to be speaking too loudly. I just try and listen and gain everyone's depth and knowledge and experience, because there's so much experience. There's so many games people have refereed and been in. There's just so much experience within the company, and it's great just sitting and listening. And like I said, one thing I always revert back to is learning the empathy of the game. And I couldn't really understand that at first when I first joined. But it's something that I've probably developed quite well, I think, in terms of what would I expect an official to do in that situation now. And I think I'm quite balanced in that aspect. And it's something that we all have to approach officiating with, especially working in it. You have to be fair, you have to be balanced. But I think I've just consumed so much knowledge since I've joined that I feel I'm in a good place in terms of what I expect from a match official now, and hopefully that only gets better the longer I stay here, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Because you mentioned obviously the objective, subjective, because something can, in a vacuum, something could be obvious that it's a foul or the referee should have done something. But like you mentioned, I think it's very interesting. Like there's a lot going on in the game dynamics, like the management of the game. Like if something's just happened 30 seconds before that might then alter the perspective of the referee potentially. So there's a lot to think about. It's not just each individual it's the whole management of the game, I would say. But yeah, I'm not a referee, so I wouldn't want to be, to be honest. It's a very difficult job by the sounds of it. So one thing actually I wanted to speak to you about, Jordan, was it's linked. I actually did a video on it. I don't think it's out yet, but it's a video on kind of, and you've actually touched upon it in some of the things you've said. Like it seems to be that an analyst is a young person's role. Like, you get into it quite young, and then it's the demands of it, and some people just don't last very long, or they move on, or they get fed up, or they don't know what progression they've got.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're still a very young guy there, John. So, I mean, you seem like you're still very much keen and very much into it. So, what's your thoughts on the whole? Because I don't know if you've seen the post I did on LinkedIn. It was about that, and because I was just thinking back to the analysts that were in the roles, like sort of when I was an analyst, and not many of them exist in those same roles. Either they've moved on to scouting or recruitment, or they've left the roles. Like you mentioned, obviously Jamie's no longer doing what he did then. So, just kind of eager to get your thoughts on that, really, Jordan.
Yeah, I think it's the more I'm in this environment, the more I think it is probably a younger person's world, just in the context of my situation right now in life just aligns perfectly with this job. If I'm watching football on a night, I can open my laptop and make notes,
Mm.
knowing that it'll help me in my work, and you could probably class that as working. And there is just certain situations where if you've got a family, you've got responsibilities,
Mm.
you can't necessarily do that. And I'm not to say that it should be handicapped for people with family to be in
Yeah.
this environment, because it is capable. But I think there is situations in how I work right now where I'll just happily watch a game of football and keep my laptop open for a couple of hours and just do a little bit at work,
Yeah.
because I'm sat there watching football. It's going to relay back into my work anyway. It's relaying into my process. It'll save me a couple of hours in the morning if I've already got some incidents that I can clip out and use in a training meeting as pre-match preparation in a technical sense. So yeah, it's just the flexibility that I'm probably, maybe I'm naive. Maybe there's analysts out there that have a big family and make it balanced, which I'm absolutely fair play to them.
Mm.
I think right now my situation is just so aligned that I've always just thought if I had these responsibilities, I'm not sure I could make it
Yeah. Yeah.
to the extent that I do now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I feel like I work in a young person's world, to be honest. I think it's just a way everything's aligned, and hopefully that evolves, because there's so much experience out there that can be find the
Yeah.
balance between for people with outside responsibilities. But and that's not to say that my current role expect me to do that.
Mm.
There's absolutely no obligation for me to do that, nor has there ever been an expectation for me to do that. I just feel that personally, if I sit there, like I said, and just do a bit on a night while I'm watching a game or something, I see something, then I think it saved me a bit of time at work, and it ultimately feeds
Yeah.
back into the process of supporting match officials. And yeah, I don't know. It's a weird topic, and it'd be interesting to hear other people's experience that have been in the industry a lot longer than I have, and just seeing how they manage to find the balance between putting in all the hours of the day and managing responsibilities outside of work. But like I said, my situation aligns right now perfectly with the demands of this role, I suppose.
Yeah. And then, so what the referees that you personally are kind of working and giving the reports to, is that the top ones then in terms of the highest level, or how far are you having just contact with the Premier League referees, or are you working with kind of all the leagues down? Like what are
Yeah,
you
we work with
involved
every
in?
group possible. Like I said, there's
Yeah.
four of us on the performance side, so it's finding that balance between all of us in terms of what we can provide at each level. Obviously, the higher level you go, the more demands there is to, I suppose, maintain that stand, because the Premier League is ultimately the main product of the country. It's the country's probably biggest interest in terms of sport. So that is the product that we have to make sure that we're fully prepared for.
Yeah.
So yeah, that probably gets a lot of attention, but that doesn't mean to say that we have to neglect the lower officials, because the officials lower down the pyramid want to get to that top level. So we
Yeah.
have to bring them on that journey with us and make sure that they feel fully supported to going into their performances, knowing that they are putting in the performance worthy of them rising through the ranks to get to that level. So we can't. There's the implementation of ERDP, which is a new scheme to try and integrate a new wave of officials and pathway of officials to bring in more officials into the game and support them to get to the top levels. So it's an exciting time to get into match officiating, to be honest. And if anyone's watching this considering it, I'd highly recommend it, to be honest, because it's just getting bigger and better and more supportive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the things you've said has surprised me in terms of what you do, and I'm sure you're
I'm
only
probably
scratching the
scratching the
surface.
surface. I'll probably end up.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot that you probably can't share as well, obviously for obvious reasons. But then the way you kind of say that innovating, and obviously what it's going to look like in 2 or 3 years, then even more stuff. So it's very, very interesting. So then you have the next question really is on some advice, really, John. You've given some in some of the other answers, but I'm just curious. Obviously, as you know, a lot of people that kind of view this channel and listen to these kind of videos are aspiring analysts. Maybe they are still at uni. They want to check out what roles are available to them. And again, that's why I wanted to get someone like you on here to show that it's not just about working in a club. There's loads of interesting roles that you can do outside of the traditional analyst in a club. So for those kind of people that are wanting to work in analysis in some capacity, what would you say is some advice that maybe you were given or you wish you were given?
Um, I think it's just about learning the game for starters. If you don't know,
Yeah,
have some form of education around what you're trying to present and demonstrate. I suppose you kind of fall or trip up quite early. But I think it's just constantly self-developing yourself. I think, like I said earlier, when I was with my coach, my communication was very, very subpar, and
yeah,
that's something that probably isn't at its peak now. But I think I'd like to think I got a bit better at it. So I think learning how to deliver your message is absolutely critical, especially
yeah,
as an analyst who, where organizations are still trying to figure out what an analyst can do and what they can
yeah,
provide. I know there's a lot of hybrid roles now where they're coaching and analysts, and a lot of
mm,
coaches, younger coaches, are still doing their own analysis now. So they're kind of finding a bridge in between.
yeah.
Hopefully they don't replace us because it'll make me redundant. But yeah, yeah, I think it's just about finding the balance between who you want to be as an analyst and developing your communication. If you're just trying to get into it and you like struggling to get that first break, because I know it's so hard. You look at a job advert, it says 2 years minimum experience. How are you supposed to get that experience if no one gives you that experience to start with? So
Yeah,
right now, it seems like the only pathway, unfortunately, is internships where you're unpaid. Barnsley for me was unpaid. I'll be completely transparent about that, but they paid my
mm,
expenses, so I had that eager
yeah,
attitude of I wanted the opportunity, I wanted to work in a club, I wanted to get the exposure, the experience. So as long as I was getting my train fare from Manchester to Barnsley paid for, I was quite happy, to be honest.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so that's a route. If you don't want to go that route, it's absolutely fair. You could develop a self portfolio, watch a game. I think I had this conversation at work the other day. It's absolutely incredible the level of access you can get now in terms of data and footage.
yeah,
I went on, I can't remember what app it is I use to just check up on the scores and stuff, but I went on last night and they've got like expected goals and shot maps
mm,
on there and stuff. And it was like, if
yeah,
you were to produce that stuff 5, 6 years ago, you'd have no chance. Finding that level of data
yeah,
access would be impossible. So just having that sort of stuff available right now, it's incredible. You go on FB rep and they've got every single piece of data going. I know they've changed providers recently, but the data is just as good as it was before. And
yeah,
footage, DAZN put all their Women's Champions League games on YouTube, and
mm,
if you want footage on that, you could do quite an easy portfolio piece on the Women's Champions League. All the
yeah, yeah,
games are on there, so
yeah,
I know there's still a lot of barriers in terms of getting your foot in the door, but to get a foot in the door, if you can't find a natural employed route, shall I say, I think that's always a good route. Because if you're at university and you've got a few hours spare a week, nothing wrong with just putting a game of football on and
oh,
looking for trends, looking for patterns, understanding the tactical element of the game, seeing if there's anything that piques your interest in terms of that, in terms of not even directly performance. You could go down the recruitment route,
yeah,
go down the data route. I think in terms of data engineers now, it's incredible how many people get into football that way. Not incredible, it's brilliant that people are coming in from a different perspective, because then you can
yeah,
balance out a subjective qualitative analysis against people's quantitative and find
mm,
that in between to kind of present a piece to coaches, to board level, whatever level you're operating at, where you can go, this is what we found, this is what we think needs to be the plan of action
yeah,
moving forward. So we were at the Opta Forum a couple of weeks ago, and some of the mathematical models.
yeah,
I like maths, but I'm um, no good at producing the level of models they were producing, and some of
yeah,
the insight they can produce from that level is incredible. And if you can find that balance between you providing the subjective side of that quantitative side, then you're onto a winning team. So if you wanted to go down the maths route, then you can always go down that route. And I suppose having the mathematical element of it always translates across to another industry if football doesn't
yeah,
work out for you. And I don't know if I'll work in football forever. I don't really know right now. Like I said, it's everything aligns perfectly for me to work in this industry and this role. But I'm constantly trying to find other little bits to add to my own portfolio, where I can think, if something ever was to come up that piqued my interest elsewhere, then I've got the capabilities to potentially
Yeah.
outside the industry. But
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't know that all the Women's Champions League was available on YouTube. So again, if like you said, if it's more accessible than ever before. So if anyone is watching, and the people that are watching, I asked this same question to, I asked for advice off every guest, and it's not the fact that it's similar advice from everyone. I think that's just because that's what you need to do. So if you are wanting to stand out, you know how popular it is now when universities are churning out loads and loads of new analysts every single year that want to be in these jobs. There's only so many jobs, so you do have to stand out. So, if you can do things like you said there, Jordan, you go on and you get data that's free online, you go on and get videos and you produce your own portfolio. It's massive. Like, you're going to get seen if you're doing work and you're doing it and you're sharing it online. People will see it. That's how people do get jobs. But yeah, and another point you mentioned there in terms of just kind of continually learning, I think it was in the last interview I did with Gary at Aspire Academy. He said himself, when he was with the New Zealand national team, he got to a point where he thought, I need to kind of reach out to other people and start learning, because I don't want to coast. I don't want to kind of fall behind, and just because some analysts will do that, they'll get in a position, they'll think, oh, I've made it now, like I'm done, I'm in this job that I wanted. But if you do that, then you are gonna fall behind, because the people that are keen and always learning, they're just going to overtake you and accelerate. So I think that's definitely an important thing to think about.
yeah, absolutely. I think that just falls into your work ethic. Like I said, I'm very driven to produce the best I can possibly produce. Not the best analyst by any stretch of the imagination, but if I feel, like I said, that couple of hours on a night, if I'm sat there watching football anyway, can help go a mile in a refereeing context or a match officiating context, and I find value in that. And yeah, the football and calendar is relentless. The truncated schedules, the midweeks, there's constant need to just be adaptable, be over as much as you can be. So I'd say, yeah, a basic work ethic, and basic need to take accountability for your own environment, shall I say, goes a long way. And yeah, just figure out what sort of analyst you want to be, not in terms of even a direct sense, just how you want to produce things, how you want to manage expectations. I think that's gone something I've learned heavily in the last 6 months is, like I said, there's only so many hours in the day. You can't say yes to everything, but can you say yes in another format that you could potentially align two tasks in one to produce the same output for two coaches or something? So yeah, manage expectations and finding out how much input you can put in for the value out. Like I said, with the older versus younger wave of officials, if I was to put in a full day's work into producing this mega dashboard or something, shall I say, for an official, and they look at it and go, yeah, that's nice. I've wasted a day's work there for no value.
Yeah.
So it's finding out where you can apply your resource accordingly to get the best value for your best bang for your buck, shall I say. So
Yeah.
learning just little minute aspects of how to work in an environment like that will go a long way. And yeah, I've gone a very long way around that, but
That's
hopefully
fine.
there's some level of
No, that's good. That's good. I can just actually imagine, Jordan, you're out with your mates watching the FA Cup final, and everyone's in the pub, and you're there thinking, well, the referee could have been a bit more, further away from the decision there, and could have been closer or whatever. So no,
yeah, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet. Boxing Day, I was sat with the family watching the football. I ended up making notes on some sort of goalkeeper behaviour, and you think to yourself, what are you doing with your life? Like I said, it's having positive impact in my work, so I'm happy.
Oh yeah, analysts are we're quite strange, aren't we, Jordan? So one thing I do ask everyone that's on here, Jordan. Again, I'm not sure if you're a big reader or not, but do you have any recommendations for any books or any podcasts, any document, anything? Doesn't have to be sport related that you want to give a shout out to.
Yeah, no, I will open that by saying I try and avoid anything sport related in terms of podcasts, because I feel it just turns into a bit of an echo chamber. I feel like the same opinions, the same, especially working in officiating, which to the outside world is, I know I'm in a privileged position that I am to know certain things that I do, but yeah, if you listen to stuff on officiating, it kind of gets a bit boring, to be honest. So sport, I kind of try and avoid, because like I said, but in terms of podcasts, I'm kind of going down like, I don't want to sound too weird, but like the psychological route. So recently I got into Chris Williamson, the Modern Wisdom.
Yeah, he's quality.
Really, he's really good.
Yeah.
Similarly, a bloke called Fergus Crawley, and he does Modern Minds,
Yeah.
which is really good. I really like them. And then probably a bit more mainstream, a bit Joe Rogan, just because of
Yeah.
his ability to hold a conversation with
Mm.
anybody in
Mm.
his opposite chair. And it might not even be it's just his ability to provoke the right questions to get the good outcomes and hold a conversation for 3 hours that's
Yeah.
filling and interesting. I just find it absolutely fascinating that he's put so much dedication to his craft that he could easily walk away financially and just retire somewhere nice and quiet, but he
Mm.
continues to just want to know more. And it's
Yeah.
he doesn't necessarily get the most high profile guests on there, but they're just interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's done like over 1,000, hasn't he? Like, it's just crazy how many episodes are on there. I've not heard of the Fergus one, but Chris Williamson, I listen to that quite regularly. So yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, check that out to anyone listening, because we do recommend them. So perfect. Anything else? Any book? You're not a reader or anything?
I don't read as much as I should. I should read
No.
more. But one that I got for Christmas was James Smith, who's also got a podcast.
I'll
Um,
listen to that as well. Yeah, we got
uh,
some taste.
a book on how to be. It's called How to Be Confident.
Mm.
Just about how you approach certain situations and stuff, which I find really good because it helps you just build into your psychological portfolio of, like I said, managing expectations, how to say no, how to carry yourself, certain situations like that. Pep Linders, the assistant at Liverpool,
Yeah,
that's quite a popular one in the industry at the minute, but I'm about a third of the way through that one.
yeah.
Um, One that's been recommended to me actually recently was Making Decisions by Ed Smith. I need to
Okay.
order that, but I'll work through my other pile first before I consider that. The Goldmine Effect, Rasmus Ankerson, I think I've mentioned
Yeah,
that
yeah,
before.
yeah,
That's really good. There's so many anecdotes in there about just high level performance and how you can strike those levels of the bits of gold. And then Soconomics, I've delved into that a few times. That's very database, but
yeah.
good to see how you can integrate that into a subjective world. But yeah, there's just a few of probably what I
Yeah,
enjoy.
no, good shouts. I'll link some of them below. I mean, like I say, the James Smith one, I've listened to his podcast, I've not got the book, but yeah, I'll link them below for anyone interested in checking them out. So I've kind of gone through most of my questions here, but I do want to quickly go to a quick fire round of questions. So I know you're a football fan, so I'm going to ask you. I'm going to give you two football players. I want you to imagine you're the manager of a team. You've got to pick one of the two that I give you in their prime. So who would you prefer? Quick fire. So I don't want you to think about it too much. So first one we have Roy Keane.
You're just talking to an analyst, Chris. We don't do quick
No,
things.
yeah, you got to do a snap decision. Snap decision. So we've got first one: Roy Keane or Patrick Vieira.
Vieira,
Wayne Rooney or Harry Kane.
Rooney,
Gerard Lampard.
Gerrard,
John Terry, Rio Ferdinand.
Rio.
Mike Dean, Howard Webb.
Not a chance.
I thought I'd slip it in there, but yeah, you don't have to answer that one.
Sure.
I mean, to be fair, I can't even answer that one. I don't know who I prefer out of them two. Both great referees. So, are they probably? Is Howard still involved? Is he?
Yeah, he's just become chief refereeing officer.
Cool, nice, yeah, perfect. So, yeah, I didn't think you'd answer that one, to be fair, but I thought I'd give it a try. So, perfect, Jordan. So, I mean, I've gone through my question. Anything else that you want to add? Anything that you think is useful to share before we wrap up?
I don't know. I've got. I think I've worked through my list. I think just to summarize, I think we working in this environment, it's quite a niche corner of the market that we work in.
Mm.
Like, I don't think people realise that we exist, which is fine. I quite enjoy existing in the silence, to be honest. But
Yeah.
I think, if there's just a world, I think it probably might be a good situation to highlight that analysts just outside of the traditional format do exist. And whilst by title we're the same, we do similar principles. We are looking at the same stuff, especially now on the performance side, looking at tactical trends and stuff and
Yeah.
shapes and patterns and movements and stuff. And I suppose as an analyst, it might be a question to you as well. It might just be a little one, but how do you celebrate the small wins? Because I was trying to figure this out recently. Like in a club, you've got the journey of
Mm.
if you win a trophy in the
I
season.
know. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean because
An analyst in this role, I was trying to figure out like what are the small wins in terms of being a referee and analyst. I was trying to think, is it something as small as like again going back to a corner routine or something, them identifying that and then just moving their position just a little bit or something. Is that
yeah.
like a small win for us? And that's so minute compared to having a medal on your neck. But
Mm.
I don't know. What do you think about like what do you think
No,
is a small win in terms
that's
of being an
a
analyst?
That's a great point, to be honest. I think it's a lot easier, isn't it, when you're in a club like you say, you hit your target for the league position that you had at the start of the season, you win a trophy or whatever, you win a game. But as a referee, you're not going to get that. So, I mean, it's a tough question for me. I didn't expect you to be firing questions back at me, Jordan. To be honest, I'm ill prepared. But I mean, I do think it's a great point. I think, like you say, though, I think you've just got to, if you can know that what you're doing is making an impact, even if it's just a small, like I said, a tiny thing in that game that you notice that it's made the referee have a better position to make the decision. It's one of them things where, if you have all these tiny little impacts, they're all going to add up, and then the standard is just going to go higher and higher with referees. So yeah, no, it's a great point, and obviously open to see what other people say as well, and comment down below if you want to give an input. But yeah, definitely for referees, because it's a very much a thankless job, isn't it? Like I say, people don't even know that you exist, but then the referees are just they've probably done the job if no one talks about them. That's what they say, don't they? Like if no one mentions a referee, then he's probably had a good game. So I suppose that's what you want to be. You don't want headlines of referees and then you've done your good job, Jordan. I'd probably say.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a bit of a personal opinion. I think it's just working in this environment and speaking to people outside that still have different opinions and stuff. I think it's just one of the only positions, not even in football, just in sport in general, that have less margin for error than any position in sport. I think even the support staff, if you do something wrong, you're not noticed on the big stage. If you do something wrong as a player, yeah, you'll be reprimanded for it by social media and XYZ in the media, but you've got 10 other players that can pick up for you, or a squad or whatever. But I think it's quite hard as an official if you make a decision that the public feel isn't the most optimal. You're vilified beyond belief. But I think it's just trying to take the public on a journey and just open the can of worms a little bit and show what we can do. And hopefully this is giving a bit of insight into how a referee and a match official, not just referees, because there's 2 assistants and a 4th official that prepare just all the same.
Yeah.
So just showing that they are afraid to everything they do. They are putting in silly hours behind the scenes and stuff. So
yeah, definitely. That's what I mean. I think this video definitely testaments that in terms of showing what does go on, because I know the average football fan probably just thinks that the referee just rocks up an hour before the game and just gets his whistle out and refs it. But obviously there's a lot goes in. They're full-time jobs at the top. So, people like yourself, the sports scientists, all of them kind of roles play a part in what goes on in that referee's 90-minute performance, or, so to speak. So perfect. So that's brilliant, Jordan. I really appreciate that. Very interesting to hear about the reports and stuff that you're doing for the refs, the kind of support groups and the different things that you do. So hopefully long may it continue. The standards keeps getting better and better, and I'm sure you've got some exciting things planned. So you're on LinkedIn. I'm just going to give a shout out to where people can find you, Jordan. So you're on LinkedIn. Feel free if I'll pop this on LinkedIn so people might reach out to you with some questions if that's all right with you, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely.
But perfect. I mean, other than that, that's everything from me, Jordan. So I appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris. I've enjoyed this, to be honest. It's weird being the other side and having people ask you questions rather than.
Well, that's it. When you asked me a question, I panicked. I don't know how people do it. So, but no, perfect. Well, yeah, thanks very much, Jordan. You enjoy your weekend, mate, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers, Chris. You too, mate.
Thanks.